All right, everyone, thank you for your patience. We'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Jeremy. I'm your account manager over here at RelSci, and thanks for joining me for this deep dive tool overview. Just to reiterate what I mentioned in the email, this is not a general training, but rather more hands-on look at the platform and an overview of certain capabilities and tools that we offer. We'll explore basic and complex functionalities of the platform, and we'll be covering topics such as relationship uploading and maintenance, account setups, new RelSci capabilities, I'm very excited about that, lists, reporting, alerts, discovery, and any other topics or tools or even workflows that you want to cover. This is going to be an interactive webinar, so please feel free to ask questions, and I'll get to as many as I can. I'll also be asking some polls to gauge what people need more explanation on or less explanation on. In terms of the webinars, this is the advanced kind of overview. We have a general training that happens twice a month. And I'm also going to be offering a brand new webinar. I'm also very excited about this. It's a kind of a workshop. It's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours. It'll be taking place the last week of May. I'll be sending out emails next week. And that one will be more of a hands-on look, step-by-step guide for problems that you may have. You can submit questions. We'll go through it slowly. So before I begin, I do want to stress 3 points about the platform. We are not social media, so no one will ever receive a friend request or alerts on either end if you mark someone as a relationship or you mark them as a prospect or follow them in a portfolio, whatever it may be. It's completely private to your company. We do not contain any user-generated data, so no LinkedIn, no Facebook. Everything must come from a publicly verifiable source. And we don't give out contact information, and this is intentional. We're not a contact network. Rather, the platform is best used to help you get that warm introduction from an existing connection. All right, so diving in. And if you ever experience any audio issues or you can't see the screen correctly or something's, technical difficulty, please write a question in and I'll try to address it as quickly as I can. All right, so the first part, relationship uploading and account setup. All right, so as you go into RelSci, this is what your main page will look like. And over here on the right-hand side, we do have the relationships in red. And as always, to view your relationships, your firm's relationships, just click into My Relationships. And this will bring up a list of your relationships, your firm's relationships. It depends on how your account is set up. So you should see 3 tabs at the top of the page. My firm's relationships or My Relationship Web, Recommended, and Potential. So we're going to stick into My Relationship Web for now. And this tab can be filtered down depending on your setup. You can filter it with My Relationships, Colleagues' Relationships. You can also search through it for a specific relationship. You want to see if you have it or not. You can report this out. You can also turn on alerts for the entire list or off or for specific individuals. And what's more important, and I find very useful, is if you're trying to take a look at how someone marked someone as a relationship, so a colleague or yourself, this details page, this column right here, will tell you the date it was matched and what type. So a file upload would be a CSV or Excel file. It could be a mobile sync, so someone synced it off the app on their phone. It could be an Outlook sync, things of that nature. It helps to kind of give you a reference of where this relationship came from. All right, so to upload your relationships, if you want to update them or start fresh, click Add More Relationships at the top here. And this will bring you to a page that shows you the various options RelSci has to upload or sync your relationships. If you click on an option, it will bring up a step-by-step instructions to complete the sync. However, I'll walk through a few of the more common or popular methods that people use. Before we begin, though, let me briefly go over what criteria RelSci needs in order to automatically match relationships. It needs name info, so this could be first name or last name, even middle initial or middle name, or full name. And we also need company info. So this could be a company name, it could be a prior, current, or even a board affiliation. So if you don't have company, if you have a company email address, we can also use that. We just pull the company name from the domain. So @RelSci would be relationship signs to company. Any other information such as position, city, any address information, phone number, is useful for increasing the accuracy of the match, but it's not required for that automatic match. All right, so taking a look at one of the options that's really popular, Outlook. Right now we just support it for PC. We're working on a Mac support. But there's going to be two ways to do an Outlook. And the one I suggest is you can upload a file here. If you click into that, it'll give you the step-by-step instructions on how to do so. But if we go back, there's a third option here that does not come default with RelSci accounts. However, it can be enabled for free, entirely included with your subscription. So it's called the continuous sync. It's a plugin for your Outlook client on your laptop or desktop. And what it does is it plugs in, you log into RelSci, and it goes through your calendar, certain folders that you indicate, your mail, and it searches for names, company information, as well as email addresses. And it constantly and consistently syncs that data into RelSci. And if we have a person that's profiled in RelSci that you have been emailing a lot, we'll match it as a relationship. And if you email them a lot or a little, we'll vary the relationship strength. So if you only email them once or twice a month, it might be a weak connection. If you email them every day, a stronger connection. If you want this enabled, entirely free, just shoot me an email and I can enable it for your account and walk you through how to use it. So going back, the next really popular way to sync relationships, especially for senior partners or board members, C-suite, would be mobile. So we have an Android and iOS mobile app available on the iPhone, iPad, and any Android device. And this allows you to access the RelSci platform as well as sync relationships from your phone. So if you're having difficulty getting a senior member at your firm or a board member at a nonprofit to sync their relationships, this might be a potential option. The next is LinkedIn or CSV. So LinkedIn, it's kind of basic instructions. It just takes you how to export, takes you to the LinkedIn page and brings you through the process of exporting your contacts. But it's very similar to the CSV or Excel format because what it does is it just exports your contacts into an Excel file and then you can upload it into RelSci. The CSV option over here is very similar because if you have Sugar as a CRM or if you have a Razor's Edge or maybe you have a homegrown CRM system and we don't have compatibility with that, what you can do is just export it into an Excel file, name the columns correctly. You have a template here that you can download, but generally it's going to be some type of first name, last name, full name, company column, position column if you have it. You don't have to use the exact headers that we have in the templates, but similar, and the system can recognize it. So that's kind of uploading relationships. I'm going to start a quick poll just to see if you guys need a kind of a full step-by-step guide on the relationship uploading process. Alright, it looks like most of you do not. However, there are some that do. We can go over at the end, or you can email me, and I'd be happy to hop on a call and walk you through the step-by-step process. We can do a screen share, whatever's easiest for you. So continuing on, still in relationship section. If we go back to that kind of home page for relationships, I want to go over the recommended and potentials tab that some people don't touch upon a lot. So recommended is RelSci takes a look at your information. If you put in kind of what position you are, if you have a profile in RelSci, or if it's just using your firm, it'll give suggestions based on that information for people you might know. The potentials tab, though, is very important, and a lot of people aren't aware of this tab. When you sync contacts into RelSci, we automatically match a certain amount. We match what is 100% correct. So company name matched, the name info matched, and we could match it 100%, and everything's great. But if we aren't quite sure, if RelSci is 90% sure it's a match, but wants to err on the side of caution, it gets put into the Potentials tab. And what it does here is it lists out everything, everyone, that it was close to matching and might have a match in the system, but it wasn't sure of. And what you can do is you can go into this Potentials tab and scroll through these people. So this is what I uploaded on the left, and this is what RelSci thinks are the potential tabs on the right. Potential matches, I should say. You can scroll down, you can match it or not match it depending on background information you have. So you might have contextual information or background information that wasn't included with the file, or that we might not even know if we try to do the potentials for you, and you can match it and increase that relationship capital count. And if you are ever curious about how your match rate is going, so, okay, well, how many matched automatically, how many are in potentials, and how many had no matches, you can go to this button at the top called Match History, click into it, and it will tell you kind of the history of what files you uploaded, how you uploaded it, how you sync those relationships, and then tell you how many new relationships were created, how many potentials, and how many did not match. All right, so continuing on, relationship maintenance. So the more frequently relationships are updated, the stronger the RelSci platform is for your firm. So we usually suggest that you do it at least twice a year. I prefer once a quarter, but I know that's not always realistic, especially if you're uploading board member contacts or C-suite, and that might just even take a year to get those Rolodexes. But if you want them to be updated and fresh, try to do it relatively often. All right, so continuing on kind of to the strategy for your account setup. So everyone's account is set up slightly different, and most firms have the most efficient setup tailored to their specific needs. However, your firm might have had a change recently, or maybe there's new capabilities that we have out. You know, if you've been a long-term client since 2013, maybe your account hasn't been changed enough. It hasn't been changed enough with the new capabilities in mind. So there might be better ways to structure your account. So the following are common setups for accounts. And if one really kind of speaks to you and you want to try it out, feel free to email me. So one way is every user corresponds to a colleague, and each of those colleagues uploads their relationships. So you have 10 people at your firm, or 10 people on a research team. They all upload their relationships. And this is very common for for-profits, especially law firms and investment banks. There might be a separate group that controls all of these accounts, some admins or some assistants. Another way to set up an account is for one central account. For example, if you look at the top here, you might have something called a development account or a central account, and what you do is you put all your organizational relationships within that account, and it kind of acts as your relationship bucket. There's also another way to set up your account where you have multiple accounts associated with different buckets, or different, in this one case, boards. So you have a board that's associated with New Jersey, a board that's associated with New York, one in Oregon. You might have an account that's called Board of New York, Board of New Jersey, Board of Oregon, and the contacts for each board is uploaded to the corresponding accounts. However, there's a brand new tool that some of you might have heard about, because I'm a big proponent of it. It's called RelWeb. And what RelWeb does is, imagine how fantastic RelSci would be, how powerful it would be if you could get all of your C-suite and all of your board members to have a RelSci account and upload their relationships. It would be extremely powerful. You can leverage that RelSci, those relationship capital. You can find pass through your more senior members at your firm. However, that's not always viable. It can be difficult if you don't have buy-in from the top, if you're at a nonprofit, and getting a board member to even look at a potential prospect is difficult enough, let alone getting their Rolodex. RelWeb addresses that issue. So what it does is it kind of makes it seem like all of your board members, all of your C-suite members have accounts in RelSci and have uploaded their relationships. But instead of using their private Rolodexes, it uses their public RelSci relationships. So I'll show you what it looks like. You'd have the capability enabled and click Manage Relationship Web. And then you go to Create New. You'd select who you want to see it for. So if you have multiple groups set up, some don't want to share with others. If you have a research division, but then you also have gift officers and they don't want to see, those relationships, maybe they're not as relevant to one group or the other, you can really vary it up and change how your account's set up. But here we have shared relationships, which is just the normal RelSci, your colleagues' relationships, your relationships that you have uploaded into the platform. However, what you can do here is, let's say I want organizational relationships. So I want to use my organization's public relationships. I could type in here, relationship science, and then select what relationships I'm going to use. So let's say our board members in C-suite, and I want the current ones. So what this is doing is it's kind of creating an account setup where it seems as if your board members in your C-suite have created RelSci accounts. So hit Add, you can name it something, and hit Apply. And so what this does, we'll go back to the relationships page, is if you notice on the right here, there's now a brand new bucket called Relationship Science LLC. And what this is doing is it's taking everyone that we have profiled for Relationship Science, the firm. So John Robson, our CEO, Neil Goldman, our founder, everyone that we have in the system, and it's taking a look at their public relationships. So as an example, if we go into the bucket real fast, it lists out everyone that it's pulling relationships from. So here's Neil Goldman, John Robson, Robert Leander, and if we go into Neil's account, or not account, excuse me, profile, what it's doing is it's taking a look at those over 4,000 relationships, and it's using them as Neil's relationships in RelSci. So those 4,000 are part of this 8,000. And it's just another way to leverage RelSci information and a way to maybe open up new paths to prospects or to targets. If you want this enabled, I know it's kind of a lot of information and it's slightly complex. Feel free to email me, call me. We can walk through it, do a one-on-one. I've enabled it for a few firms after our last advanced training, and a lot of them are liking it and finding value in it. And it's entirely included with your subscription. Any capability I talk about here, entirely free, included with your subscription. All right, so I'm going to do another poll. Just talking if you want me to go in more detail about RelWeb. So it seems like some of you are interested, but most either found that explanation perfectly fine or are not interested at all. So I'll move on. So another new feature that we implemented in RelSci that a lot of people are finding value in is what's called Proprietary Data. So this allows your firm to more easily customize your RelSci experience by adding internal data to people's profiles in RelSci. So these three categories of prop data that we have are called contact information. So you can upload contact information into RelSci and actually have it stay within RelSci. So instead of it just being used to match, it can actually live within RelSci and you can access it. We have notes. So if you're at a nonprofit and you're working with a prospect team and you want to take notes on maybe an individual target or a company, it allows for that on the company profile or individual profile. And I'll show you this in a second. And then also, I think the most valuable one is internal ID. So if you have constituent IDs or prospect IDs, or you have a CRM system such as Salesforce, Dynamics, whatever it may be, and you want to be able to, load relationships into RelSci, but when you generate a report, you want to kind of be able to reference it back to your CRM system. This allows you to do that. You can match internal identifiers to the platform. It doesn't have to be relationships. It could be relationships. It could be prospects, whatever it may be. And then when you export a report, such as in PowerSearch, in Pathfinder, just a profile, it will actually list out the internal identifier for your firm. So I'll go ahead and show this, and I'll pull up. I'll pull up Bill Gates. So I'll show you where this proprietary information is located. First, if you wanted to manually add an internal identifier, you could at the top here, right above follow and report. And you could type in, whatever identifier you have and save it. If you continue down, this is where the notes and contact detail is. So you can manually add contact information, phone number, email address, whatever it may be, and save it. You can also have notes. So you can take private notes if you don't want anyone but you to see what you're writing about. Or you could have shared notes and share them with a colleague or a whole group of colleagues. To answer some questions that I'm sure some of you have about internal identifiers, if you wanted to upload a lot of internal identifiers to profiles or even contact information, you can do that. All you need is to be an administrator, and I can enable it for you if you wish, and go to the administrator page at the top right. And then go over to the internal ID tab. And what this allows you to do is upload in bulk internal identifiers. So if you really wished, you could take your entire CRM system and upload it into RelSci and match internal identifiers. That way, you can always, whatever report you pull from RelSci, you can always reference it back into your CRM system and easily tell if you pull the prospect, for example, you can check if they are already in your CRM system, or if they're a brand new contact. So I'm going to start the next poll. I know it may seem like I'm doing a lot of polls, but these are new capabilities. I just want to kind of gauge your interest. So it seems like a pretty even split, about 60-40, 60 for yes. So I'll be brief, since some of you are very interested and others are not, and just generally go over what we offer for proprietary information. 1, contact information. You can upload relationships, you can upload identifiers here, you can include contact information, and it will actually sync it to the platform and into the profile. Notes you can also sync, but I usually don't suggest doing that. We do have a character limit on them, so they're best used if you want to take personal notes within RelSci, so you don't have to take notes in a Word doc or within your CRM system and kind of match them together. Or if you're on a team, especially if you're working in different offices, it's a great way to see if anyone else has researched or prospected an individual or foundation or company before. And internal identifiers, This is the best use case, I think, for for-profits and nonprofits, whoever you are. If you have a CRM system, this is perfect for you. You can upload in mass internal identifiers or one-off. So all of this information will export out in RelSci as reports. Makes it easy to match entities to your internal CRM system with VLOOKUPs, fuzzy lookups, or manually. If you're interested in any of these new capabilities I have mentioned, just feel free to email me and we can have a discussion about it. All right, so continuing on. Next, I always like to go over lists. So lists are a static bucket where you can store people and or organizations that interest you. This could be used for prospect lists, parents list, gala attendees, portfolios, investors, as well as a place for what we call RelSci lists. So not only can you store your own lists here that you import externally with the upload file to list function, and not only is it a place to store internally created lists where you can add a power search result to a list as a prospect list or investor search as a potential investor list, but you can also upload lists that we have created here over at RelSci. So these lists include things such as the Forbes 400, the Forbes Billionaires list, which actually we just updated a few weeks ago to the Forbes Billionaires list 2016. The Fortune 500 1000 list, the Giving Pledge, we have tons of lists. There's a handout attached to the user interface that lists all of the lists that we have available. What you can do, you can download that document and mark whatever list you're interested in, send it over to me, and I can upload those lists into your account on your behalf. And as I said, entirely included with your subscription. So I do want to briefly go over how to upload a list. Whenever you're uploading a list, you have to use an Excel file or CSV file, and you have to use the template we provide if you want to import external information. It's very similar to uploading relationships, but there is one fantastic benefit that relationships doesn't have that you have in lists. So let's say I upload this Fortune 100 list, kind of a test list here. I can name it whatever I want. But the fantastic thing is if you have fields in this file that you want included in RelSci, so for example, estimated net wealth, if they're a frequent donor, if they've attended an event before, if they're on your board, if they're an investor, if there's some internal relationship that is good to know, you can mark that as a field. So right now, the standard fields in RelSci are name and description. However, this column over here called uploaded fields, you can put any of those uploaded fields into RelSci. So if you have estimated net wealth, or in this case, company, I could click that and include it in my list, and it will live internally in RelSci. But not only can you do this, this is great for nonprofits here. We have an ability called custom field. If you don't have it enabled, ask me, I'll enable it. Just click it. And what this allows is, first you can take notes within the list, or if it's a specific campaign you're running, you can indicate whether or not you've reached out to this individual. You can make it a checkbox for a similar function. What I think is great is what's called the drop-down menu. So if you select drop-down menu and hit edit drop-down, you can add multiple drop-down options. And what I've seen people do is make options for an example, an event or a gala they're running. And they uploaded a list of everyone they sent out invitations to, and then mark within RelSci whether or not they're attending, maybe they're declined, or they haven't responded yet. So it's a great use case for this specific capability. And there's another reason I always like to stress lists. RelSci is powerful on its own, but lists make RelSci even more powerful because it makes the universe of RelSci specific to your firm's needs. For example, if you have a prospect list, you now have that living within RelSci. If you have a portfolio, you now have that living within RelSci. You can make alerts based on lists. You can use lists within all the other tools. You can use them in Power Search, Discovery, and even Pathfinder. So you have a prospect list and you want a path to it, you can go to Pathfinder, go for My Relationships, my firm's relationships, my relationship web, whatever you may have, and type in, let's say, for example, prospect list. So instead of searching prospect by prospect, individual, or if it's foundation to foundation, you can just select prospect list and search for paths to all of those prospects at once. As always, if you have any questions about what I'm going over, I know it's a lot of information all at once. Please feel free to write in a question in the user interface. I'd be happy to answer them. Even if it's not relevant to what I'm talking about, feel free. So the next thing I want to go over is called Save Searches. Some of you may know about these, others may not. They're similar to lists, but key difference is they're dynamic. So if you run a prospects search, you're looking for people that graduated from a certain university, or you're looking for people that are in a certain location that have made an insider transaction, sold a share in a company or in an industry recently, the past 30 days, something of that nature. And you don't want to keep typing in the information every time you search for it. Or better yet, if you have a base search, so you always search for people that have donated to a specific cause, that went to a specific school, but you changed the location, this is a perfect use case. So let's say I'm searching for people that live in New York, that, let's make it an insider transaction. So people that live in New York that bought or sold shares in chemicals, sold the shares in the last 30 days. Let's see what that pulls up. I apologize for the wait. Loading is taking a little too long, so let's try a different search and see if that helps. It does not seem to want to cooperate with me, so let me reload the page. I apologize for the inconvenience. Let's try a slightly different search. So we're looking for people located in New York that have recently sold shares in business and consumer services. And it seems like it still does not want to cooperate with me. So I'm going to change the search up. I apologize for anyone that's interested in that type of search. Instead, I'll make it more for nonprofit focus for now. It's still relevant, though, for everyone. So let's say I want to search for people in New York that have recently made a donation. Oh, never mind. Here we go. And finally brought up results. So, why did Vivek here come up in the results? He works at, which is based in New York, so Data. Data Synapse is based in New York, so he's associated with New York. And he recently bought shares or sold shares in Nielsen Holdings. And it gives you the amount. So this brings up 50 people that recently sold shares within business and consumer services. So this is great. If we want to run this every week, every two, instead of adding it to a list here, what we can do instead is hit save. And save this search as So now we can run this search whenever we want just by going to the top and clicking Open Save Search. And we can select any type of search that we want to run again instead of putting all the criteria over again. So I selected a save search to run over again. And it seems like the system is not wanting to cooperate with me still. So I apologize, but I can still kind of give you a brief glimpse into what I was trying to explain. So I apologize for the technical issues on my end. But when you run Power Search usually, when you search for someone, there's a couple tabs that appear at the top here. So all, my RelWeb or my relationships, colleagues, and what these tabs do for you is, let's say you have 1,000 people that appear in a result, but you want to know who you're connected to. You can click into each of these, here we go, into each of these tabs for that. So for example, there's 54 people that recently were involved with an insider transaction in New York City in banking. And if I want to see who we might have a connection to, I can hit Extended here. And what this does is it tells me who, using my relationships, so my relationship capital, can I get in touch with out of that list. It might take a while to load, so I'll continue on. Here we go, 16 people. So of those 54, I have potential access to 16. So it's an easy way to get a brief glimpse at who you might have access to in a search, instead of using Pathfinder for every single person. It's just more efficient. But why I really find Save Searches powerful is because of these two tabs that do not appear usually if you're running a normal Power Search. They're called Added and Removed. So what this does is it tells you, since the last time you ran the search, whether that be a month ago, a week ago, a day ago, a year ago, it tells you who has been added since you ran it last, and who has been removed since you ran it last. So for example, it says 5 people removed, so that no longer appear in that 54 that were on the last search I ran. So this is really powerful. But what makes this even more powerful is it's kind of inefficient, if you want to run this every day or every week, to come into RelSci and run it every time, and then report it out. So what RelSci allows you to do is when you report anything, a profile, a Pathfinder result, a Power Search result, we have this section called My Reports to go to My Reports. Simply go up to the top where your name is listed and click it and go to My Reports. And so what this does is it brings up a history of all your reports. So first, it's very useful if you want to see, okay, what report did I run a couple weeks ago that I can't find in my downloads folder, it's disappeared, don't know where I put it. Come to My Reports, we actually have that history, and you can download it again or run it again, and you now have it. However, what's really powerful about this specifically is you can schedule reports. For example, let's say you want to run that save search every 2 weeks or every month to see recent insider transactions or recent donors. So people that maybe have recently donated to a cause that your firm is affiliated with. You can hit schedule, name the report, tell it how often you want it to email it to you, weekly, monthly, when do you want it? Well, I don't want it on a Sunday. How about Mondays or monthly, as well as what day of the month in the first week will be sent to you. And these are sent around the same time alerts are. So if you receive your alerts around 9:30, 10 in the morning, this is when the report would come through as well. So is anyone interested in explaining this more in Power Search, anything of that nature? Please write in a question if you are. I'm going to run a poll which is discussing lists, and specifically if you're interested in how lists are used, for example, in Power Search. Let me know. All right, so relatively 50-50. So I'll briefly explain it high level. So RelSci, when you use Power Search, is searching through, depending if you're in the People tab or the Organization tab, it's going to search through the 4.5 million individuals we have profiled or the 1.5 million organizations we have profiled. Now that's a lot. It's a lot of information, and it's great. And Power Search is fantastic at kind of paring that down into manageable chunks. But sometimes it's too much. It's not actionable. You get 5,000 results or more, even 3,000. You can't. It's really great information, but it's not exactly what you're looking for. So what lists allow you to do, in Power Search specifically, is search within them. So let's say you have the Forbes Billionaires list, and you're really interested in looking for a connection or for people that went to a specific school in the Forbes Billionaire list. What you can do is, using this appears on field, you can type in a list name, any list. I'll do the prospect list, for example, and you can select it. And so what this allows you to do is, instead of searching through those 4.5 million people or 1.5 million organizations, it allows you to search within that list. So if it's a list of 1,000, you can pare that down. If it's a list of even 50, you can get very, very specific and granular. So that's how you can use lists in Power Search. You can use them even more complex ways. I can get into that later. You can even use them with organizations if you want to have a list of organizations as well. So I'm going to continue on with alerts real fast. Now we have 14 minutes. I do want to save some time for questions, if anyone has any. And I'd be more than happy to stay 5 or 10 extra minutes on the top of the hour to answer any of the questions you may have. So next, alerts. So alerts are one of the more popular features within RelSci, and with good reason. We push out employment and board changes because we have bots that sit on company websites and we receive third-party information. We push out articles from third-party publications such as the Washington Post, the New York Times, and many more. There's a few things about alerts that some people don't know. First, if you're looking for specific alerts about a specific topic or industry, or you just want to do a search one-off, there is a feature for that. It's called Advanced Search. And what this allows you to do is generate an alert, so you always get it, or just a one-time alert. You just want to see what's going on in a certain industry, or a certain company or topic, and you can do it using Advanced Search. Excuse me. The other way, another cool feature of alerts that people aren't aware of, is you can share the articles you come across. So for example, if I go back to all alerts, and I'm really interested in, for example, the Nature Conservancy, about Duncan Poor, right here. So there's this fantastic article, really useful for me, but I think it'd be great and more useful for a manager, managing partner, could be the CEO, or even someone at another firm, and even if they're not a RelSci user. So if they don't have a RelSci username or account, and if they're at another firm, you can share this with them. Just click the share button here, and you can email this link, you can copy it, and you can forward it to friends and family, your colleagues, other users of RelSci, people that don't use RelSci. It's a great way to share information. The next thing people aren't aware of about alerts is what's called alert settings. If you feel like you're not getting enough information, or getting too much information, or not relevant information about certain topics, this is where you would come. The first page is customizing your alerts. You can choose what alert sources you want. So if you're really not interested in getting alerts about your relationships, you can turn it off. If you're interested in your colleagues, you can turn those on. If you're interested in specific lists and want to do it en masse instead of going to each individual list, you can do that here. For example, okay, I'm very interested in the Philanthropy 50, interested in my donor prospect list, and also interested in the Giving Pledge. But if I was at a for-profit, I wouldn't be interested in these at all, and maybe more the Fortune 500 and the Forbes 400 and the Fortune 500. But you can also do save searches. You can do industries if you're really interested in a specific industry. So for example, banking and finance. I could do that. And not only can I do that, I can filter it down by clicking this filter button right here. And it pops up different ways to filter banking and finance. So if I'm really only interested in employment and board changes in banking and finance, or in legal, a lot of legal firms like to capture that data on specific positions that people leave, or if they join a new firm, this would be a way to gather all that data. For nonprofits, if you're just interested in donations and philanthropy in a specific industry, or even on a specific list, so if you have a list of prospects, you can go back up. So let's say we have that donor prospect list. We can click that, turn the alert on, hit filter, and we can narrow it down. So donations and philanthropy. So now I'm going to start receiving only alerts about that prospect list, about donations and philanthropic movements that they're involved with. If you want more information about your alerts, you can go to email settings. So standard is you have a daily alert that comes into your inbox with 10 headlines, and it's combined. And I'll explain what these mean. First, daily, weekly, or instant. So instant would be if I want the alert right now, always. Daily is the standard. It's every morning around 9:30 your time. You'll get an alert. What combined and individual means, if you ever forget, there's a little helpful hint up here. But combined means you're going to get one email about all of the sources of your alerts. So if you have a prospect list, you have your relationships, you have an industry you're following, you'll receive one email with all of those alerts combined. If you want to receive 3 separate emails about those 3 separate topics, you'd select individual. And if you want to receive a lot of headlines, we support up to 100. However, if you really want to get a lot of information, I'm not sure who has the time to read hundreds upon hundreds of headlines every day, but if you had 10 alert sources and you selected individual and you selected 100 headlines, you'd be receiving 1,000 articles a day. So that's alerts. So I'm going to launch another poll that just is kind of what tool you'd like me to go over in more detail. All right, well, there's a clear winner, which is Discovery, with more than 85% of all the attendees, of all you guys wanting to go over that. And I'm actually very glad to hear that Discovery, in my personal opinion, is the most underutilized tool of RelSci. Whether that's because it was newly implemented about 8 months ago and now we've worked all the bugs out, or whether it's because we go over it last in a training, or it's because it's kind of a different tool and people don't know how to view it. It's a great tool for nonprofits, for-profits, whatever your need. What Discovery does is, if Pathfinder is a micro look at how you're connected to an individual, an organization, a prospect list, Discovery is a macro top-down look at your firm's relationships web. So your reach into a certain industry, into a certain location, into a certain role. It breaks that all down. So continuing on, I could have a whole hour discussion about Discovery, so I'll try to be brief and give a summary. The first module at the top here breaks down one source of relationships. So for example, if I hit change, right now it's going from my relationships web. So my relationships, my firm's relationships, my colleagues. But you can change this to an organization. You could type in your firm. You could type in a firm you're interested in and see what their reach is like. You can type in a list or even an individual. So if you want to see how Bill Gates' relationships are structured by industry, by location, by role, you can do this. But for now, let's just do my relationships web. What you can do next is you can go into industry, for example, and a pie chart will open up. And it will break down your relationships by industry, who you know in one industry. So for example, investment services and portfolio management. It's the industry that my firm has the most connections to. And if we hover over this little pie chart here, it'll tell me how many people we know, right here, how many organizations, who the most connected organizations are to my firm, the top locations, top roles. If you want more detail, click into it. So this is great if you're like, well, I need to get more information on investment services, or maybe we should try expanding into investment services. Who do we know in that sector? This would be a great way to, thus the name, discover a connection that you weren't aware of. So this breaks down the organizations you have connections to in the investment services industry. For example, if we continue down, let's look up Bank of America Merrill Lynch. It tells you who we know there, what connections are like. You can click into this. To get more detail, you can report this out. And what's even better is if you're not interested in organizations and just people, you can just click the People tab at the top left. You can break it down by people who you know in the investment services, who you can go have a conversation with, And what's better yet, if you want more detail on that individual and the specific roles they've had in that industry, so for example, Gary here, click into role right here where he matched on, and it breaks down his roles he's had in the investment services, management services industry. And this is just investment services, investment management and services. There's a whole host of other sectors, and this is just in industry. If there's a role, it breaks it down by who you know that's a board member, CEO, founder, what roles they've matched on. So where have they been a founder? Where are they or have been a board member? It does it by location. So if you're trying to expand into the tri-state area or further, this is a great way to do so. And I know we're getting close on time, but that's just the first module. And I haven't covered everything in the first module. There's a second module here. And what this does is it allows you to compare two relationship sources. So for example, if you have the Philanthropy 50, and then you want to go from My Relationships web, what this allows you to do, it allows you to compare the two sources. So for example, who is on the Philanthropy 50 list that we have a connection with. And when you do that, it tells you who you have that connection with that is also on the Philanthropy 50 list. It's a great way to compare two lists, two organizations, and find connections you weren't aware of. So that's Discovery in a nutshell. As I said, I could go for hours and hours on Discovery. I've worked with a few firms. We're doing massive projects. For example, marketing. We're breaking down someone's Rolodex and who they know in certain industries and what roles they have access to and what locations they have access to. And they can use that as marketing material. A lot of different use cases. So any questions? That kind of wraps up the general webinar, or I should say advanced webinar, but what I had to cover. I always like to draw your attention to, if you want to ask for more profiles, hit the RelSci services button and profile requests and data errors. You can submit as many of these as you wish. Feel free. It's entirely included with your subscription. If you have any issues, questions about the new capabilities I went over, I know it was a lot of information. A ton, I've been told. It's fine. This is more of a conversation starter. I just want to put the information out there. And if you're interested, if something specific caught your attention, email me. We can set up a time to chat and go into more detail on that specific capability or question you had, and we can walk step by step through it in the best use case for your firm or for you. So I'm going to be ending the webinar soon. If there's any questions, write them in right now. And if not, I'd be happy to hop on a quick call with you after this and discuss it as well. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for attending. I hope it was valuable. Hope it was useful. There'll be a quick survey at the end that's just useful for future webinars and for me to know whether or not the information I am discussing is valuable to you and your firm. So if you could fill that out, I'd much appreciate it.